is Georgia Hortin. I live at Brookdale Senior Living in Bonita Springs, Florida, and I'm 98 years old now. I taught school for 30 years. I've been retired for 32 years. I was a teacher at Bonita Elementary from 1969 and 70 until 1984. I was born in White County, Illinois in December 28, 1918, right after World War I ended. Then I grew up in Southern Illinois, attended McKendree College for 2 years. Then my parents moved to Cincinnati, Ohio, and I went to the Teachers College of the University of Cincinnati. Graduated in 1940 with a Bachelor of Science in Education. I taught in Ohio for 4 years. By that time, World War II had been going on, and after World War II was ended, my husband-to-be came home from the Pacific. He was gone for 39 months without a furlough home. I had met Dale Hortin at McKendree College, and we had corresponded all 39 months that he was in the Pacific. When he came home, we were married in Cincinnati, and we moved back to Illinois, where he continued his teaching career. In 1957, he accepted a job as principal of Villa Grove, Illinois school system, but he did not like it. And he was an avid fisherman, so it was not difficult for him to accept my brother's invitation to come to Florida. So we came to Florida in 1957. I wanted to become a teacher because when I was 14, I gave my life to Christ. I went down to a mourner's bench in a little church in the town where I was born and gave my life to the Lord. And I seemed to be inside of me, dear Lord, make me a teacher or a preacher for you. So it just came about then that I became a teacher. I met my husband when I went to McKendree College in the fall of 1936. Dale was a year ahead of me. We became friends and would just study together at the library and things like that. When I moved to Cincinnati with my parents at the end of my second year at McKendree, he did come out to see me once and got my address, and we corresponded. He was drafted. He was teaching at Enfield, Illinois at the time. Dale was an English teacher. He was sent to Seattle, Washington, where he got pneumonia. But they kept him in the Army. They got him over that. And he wrote to me and asked me if I would write to him while he was in the Army. And of course, I consented. He was in the Illinois 33rd Division of the Army. And he went from Hawaii to New Guinea to the Philippines to Borneo. He went into Japan with the Army of Occupation, and came home on the USS Barnstable, a troop carrier, and he said all the way home they played that song, Sentimental Journey. In the process of our writing for those 39 months in which he did not get a furlough home, we fell in love with each other. Strange as that may seem, and because friendship is the basis of love, and we were good friends before, and he proposed by mail, and as I said previously, we were married as soon as he came home. January 2nd, 1946, and we had 54 wonderful years together. Oh, I like to watch old movies, Turner Classic movies, and Dale liked to watch baseball. Always rooting for the Reds because we lived in Cincinnati for a year before moving back to Illinois. And that's when he first got back from World War II from the Pacific, and he would go to the Reds games. And I remember one afternoon that Gone with the Wind was on, and also a baseball game. And I was very thankful he gave up the baseball game so I could watch Gone with the Wind. Well, we had two sons. They both graduated from Naples Community High School. Howard was in ROTC, which was very good for him. In fact, it was so good that Dale, at that time, was principal at Cypress Lake, and he was the one that started the junior ROTC program at Cypress Lake, which spread to others. But Howard was, both of our sons were great fishermen, as was their father. And Howard, at 19, had gone to Tampa and had his captain's license to captain a charter boat to take people fishing. But he was going to the University of Florida at Gainesville, and when he came home at Christmas, he was working for a charter boat captain at Fort Myers Beach, and he was captaining one of the boats. And one night in 1971, on the way home from Fort Myers Beach to Bonita Shores, he fell asleep at the wheel and veered into the next lane and hit another car head-on, which was fatal for both him and another man. So that was very sad, but we went on, and after that, Ronald became felt very guilty because he was invited to go with Howard the night of his accident, and he chose to go to Naples instead. In the meantime, he had graduated from the community college in Fort Myers, Edison Community College, and he had gone to college in Fort Lauderdale and was within 6 months of graduating when he relapsed again. And so he worked as a house painter to help defray his college expenses and other expenses. In 1997, he died of an accidental overdose of prescription drugs at age 43. A dear boy. On his 23rd birthday, he came home and caught a 23-pound snook. And he tried ever after to do the same, but it never happened again. My father had retired to Bonita Beach in 1948, and they bought lots on Hickory Boulevard and started the Bonita Beach Apartments. And my brother, C.E. Rush, they had the Bonita Beach Apartments, and he had a charter fishing boat, the Melody. And they invited us when they heard that Dale didn't like Villa Grove. They invited us to come to Florida and for him to apply for the principalship at Bonita Elementary, which he did. And he was there 5 years before going to Cypress Lake. Well, when our sons got in the 2nd and 4th grade, I was in my early 40s, but I had the yin to go back to work. And so Dale got me a job at Thomas Edison Elementary, where I worked for 2 years. But I wanted to get closer to home. That was quite a drive from Bonita Shores to Edison Public Schools. So I got hired at Lake Park in Naples for 1 year, and then Seagate opened, and we were given the opportunity to go there. I did. I went to Seagate and stayed for 5 years, and still trying to get closer to home. And finally, in 1969-70, I was hired at Bonita Elementary, where I stayed for 15 years before retiring in 1984. Well, the first year there, I taught first grade. And one of my pupils was Rhonda Lyles, and I still, Rhonda and I still keep in touch. And I'm very proud of Rhonda and her work with the Bonita Historical Society. And the second year, I taught a combination first and second grade. And the third year, kindergarten became part of the public schools. Before that, people just had little pre-kindergarten and kindergartens in the churches and places. But I taught kindergarten then until the last year that I worked. I was asked to teach another first grade, which I did. Ken Shivel asked me if I would contribute my memories of how the Lions Club helped change my life when I was first hired to teach at Bonita Springs Elementary in about 1970. I had been teaching in Naples, but wanted to get closer to home. And one of the first things that they did was the Lions Club offered to send me to Winter Haven to participate in a week-long workshop of how to help a child. And it was just the making of my 15 years at Bonita Elementary. What it was, I went to this community college for a week, and the ophthalmologists and the optometrists would lecture on how to help a child. And the basis of their lecture was how to use the jumping board, the balance beam, and best of all, the templates. The templates were 8 by 11 in size and fitted over a sheet of paper. And they had all the basic shapes on them: the circle, the oval lying down, the oval standing up, the square, the triangle, and the rectangle. And so when I came home from the workshop, Ken and David Edge and other members of the Lions Club immediately made us a jumping board, a balance beam, and a set of these templates, about 25. I usually had about 24, 25 pupils. And the way I used the templates was I had an overhead projector, and I would take my pencil and go round and round in each shape 10 times. And that way the children learned the basic shapes. And from there, they learned their alphabet and how to make it. We made the A inside the triangle, the B inside the square, the C inside the circle, and so on. They loved it. And they loved the jumping board and the balance beam too. I thought of the name of our principal, Mr. Baker. Ken had given me a picture of the children in the playground with the jumping board and the balance beam. And there was Mr. Baker and David Edge and myself and the children. And David Edge's son, Jeff, or Freddie, I'm not sure which one, was in my class that year. So I went on to be at Bonita Elementary the last 15 years that I taught, and I used those things that the Lions Club had gifted me with each class, even if I were teaching first grade or first and second, whatever. And I retired in 1984, and I look back on my week at Winter Haven and learning about how to help a child and then putting it into practice as one of my happiest memories. Yes, I do. And I leave, whether they contact me or not, I leave it up to them. And several have. One of the highlights of my contact with former pupils is, can't remember what, it's since I've lived at Brookdale. Alina Chavez took me to Bonita Elementary for breakfast with Santa one year, and in the school cafeteria. And I got to see all the children go up on the stage and tell Santa what they wanted for Christmas. That was quite a highlight of my memories. And others have contacted me. On my 90th birthday, the marketing director here put a note in the banner for everyone who knew me to send me a birthday card. I got 90 birthday cards from former pupils and people who knew me. It was a wonderful time. And I will have to say that in the loss of our sons, the love of the children that I taught was very healing and comforting, that I could do something for them. I always said they did more for me than I did for them, but they were all loving and willing to learn, ready to learn. And they entertained me with their songs and with their speech. Well, yes, Bonita was growing, but not very fast. It was a wonderful time of life for me and for all of us who lived back then. And it's wonderful nowadays to run into somebody from way back then. It's all by the grace of God, but I do exercise. I've always exercised daily, and just tried to live as healthy as I could, and then leave the rest to the good Lord. When we came to Florida, my husband was hired as principal of Bonita Elementary School, and he held that job for 5 years before being hired as the first principal at Cypress Lake, which was then a junior-senior high. And in the meantime, I stayed home with our two sons, Howard and Ronald, who were 3 and 5 years old. And while I was staying home with them, a neighbor offered to teach me how to make baskets out of pine needles. And this is what I'm doing now, making baskets out of pine needles and teaching others. And the way I do it is we pick up the pine needles, and only the best, not the ones that could be used for mulch. Cut off the caps, wash them in hot water, and bring them in and dry them. And if you're making something big, you can use them dry. If you're making something small, they have to be wet and flexible. And the way I do it is I start out with a bunch of pine needles about as big as a pencil and bind it down with a stitch. I'm using wax linen thread. The first 30 years that I did basket work, I only used raffia. But I've learned so much from the people I've tried to teach basket work that now I use different things. In 2003, a year or so after I came here, Claire McMahon asked me if I would volunteer to teach pine needle basketry if she would open the class to the public. And of course I said yes, I was happy to do it. So since 2003, we have met every Wednesday in the activities room at what is now Brookdale. Since 2003, I have not missed a basket class on Wednesday, except when ill. This year, at the Christmas party, we had 25 people from outside of Brookdale. We finally have one resident who is a member who does wonderful work, Janet, and her daughter, Linda. The season is here, and many of our northern people are returning to the class. And we will have a show and sell on February 25th from 9 to 3 here at Brookdale. Well, I'm very happy here. I'm just thankful that I had the best of Bonita up until now, and I'm just amazed at how it has grown and developed and everything, and I'm just glad I lived when I lived, and that was a wonderful time, and thankful that I'm here at Brookdale for my last years. The years here and the basket class are truly a blessing and a gift from God for my old age.